From 2004 to 2008, writer Joss Whedon and artist John Cassaday crafted one of the greatest sagas in the X-Men storied history. It was equal parts suspense, nostalgia, and humor. A tale of love and ultimately sacrifice. And it led to some pretty great action figures as well. Let's take a deep dive into Astonishing X-Men. Hey y'all, and welcome back to Carbon Scoring, the best place for comics history and action figures. We are starting our video series looking at classic runs of X-Men comics and the action figures that came from them, beginning with Astonishing X-Men, Joss Whedon and John Cassaday's 4-year opus on the title. But before we get into that, we need to put this run into some historical context. The 1990s were a boom time for the X-Men, with Chris Claremont and Jim Lee's X-Men #1 shattering sales records to the tune of 8 million copies sold. But as the decade went on, the brand became diluted, and the quality of the books began to slip. The franchise was recharged for the masses with the release of the first X-Men movie in 2000. While the film was inspired by the comics in turn began to look more and more like the films. Scottish writer Grant Morrison took over the books in 2001 with a groundbreaking progressive take on Marvel's mutants. Spandex was out and leather jackets were in, fusing the comic world with the movie universe and creating a more cohesive visual language. Morrison's time on the book was filled with over-the-top ideas, from Professor Xavier's twin sister Cassandra Nova, whom he attempted to kill while they were still in the womb, emerging as an elemental force to be reckoned with, to the secondary mutations evolving the looks of classic characters like Beast, to a love triangle between Cyclops, Jean Grey, and Emma Frost, the former villain known as the White Queen. Morrison's run ended with Magneto killing Jean Grey, dying once again in Cyclops' arms. Magneto was then beheaded by Wolverine. As one does when one is in a berserker rage. It would have been easier for Whedon and Cassaday to ignore all that chaos and simply reboot the entire franchise. But as we will see, paying homage to the X-Tales that came before them was a hallmark of their time on the book. Hey, if y'all enjoy this kind of deep dive into the action figures and comics that we all love, give this video a like and leave a comment. Not only does it encourage me, but it helps YouTube to know to share this video with other people who might enjoy it, which allows us to grow our community faster. Now, let's take a look at our creators. Joss Whedon was a co-writer of the classic film Toy Story, but at the time he took on Astonishing X-Men, he was best known as the creator and driving force behind the cult TV hit Buffy the Vampire Slayer. As you all remember, Buffy was the story of an unlikely hero, a young woman surrounded by a makeshift family whose life and loves were constantly complicated by whichever big bad was ruining the day that season. The show was characterized by its sharp dialogue, deep characterizations, amazing wit and humor, and a true dedication to exploring the heart of the main character. You might want to jot down some of those themes, because they're going to come back up as we go through Whedon's run on X-Men. His artistic collaborator in this endeavor was John Cassaday. A self-taught illustrator with a film school background, Cassaday brought a cinematic scope and a finely textured realism to the comics medium, most famously up to this point while teaming with Warren Ellis on the genre-bending book Planetary. Joining Cassaday on the art chores was his color artist from Planetary, Laura Martin, whose tonal skills perfectly matched Cassaday's storytelling and captured a classic comic book vibe while providing all the depth that modern color art allows. The two artists were able to provide so much storytelling through facial expressions and body positions that it allowed Whedon's scripting to breathe with proper spacing. While the X-Men have some of the greatest villains in comics, the stories that always reverberate with the audience are the ones that are focused on the X-Men themselves. So let's take a look at the team of mutants that Whedon and Cassaday assembled. Starting with the central character and core of the book, Kitty Pryde. Kitty joined the X-Men as a 13-year-old back in Chris Claremont and John Byrne's run, and has remained a fan favorite ever since. As one of the youngest X-Men, she always provided the point of view of the reader, the wide-eyed wonder at the fantastical world around her. Her power set, being able to phase through solid matter and also disrupt electronics while doing so, was not the most aggressive or powerful for a team of superheroes. But Whedon used those limitations, along with her intelligence and heart, to craft the overarching story around her. Kitty's Marvel Legend figure came in one of Toy Biz's final offerings in 2007 as part of the Giant Man Build-A-Figure wave. This wave was exclusive to Walmart and required obtaining 9 unique figures to complete Giant Man. While her costume is a spot-on representation of Cassaday's design for Astonishing, the facial sculpt and hair aren't very consistent. I can understand why. Cassaday kept Kitty's hair either flat or in a ponytail, a fact her teammate would mock her for later in the series, whereas the Legends figure went with the more classic comic portrayal of Kitty's curly locks. I certainly understand why Toy Biz made this design choice, but I always prefer sticking to the artist representation. But she also came with her loyal dragon, Lockheed. Next up is Dr. Henry Mccoy, the lovable Beast. Hank was an original X-Man, and using his genius-level intellect, he morphed from an athletic acrobat into a creature more consistent with his heroic moniker. Originally gray, he eventually settled on blue fur after a comics publishing error. Known by many as part of a buddy bromance with Wonder Man in the Avengers, Hank has been a part of essentially every X-Men team over the ages. During Grant Morrison's run immediately preceding Astonishing X-Men, McCoy underwent a secondary mutation to a more cat-like form. Whedon and Cassaday explored this and made it a central tenet in Beast's story throughout their run. The Astonishing X-Men version of Beast appeared in 2009's Nemesis Build-A-Figure wave, one of Hasbro's final waves before shutting the Marvel Legends line down for several years. While the lack of paint wash on the figure hinders the depth of the sculpt, the costume design and facial likeness are clearly derived from John Cassaday's artwork. The sculpt does limit the articulation at the hips and shoulders, which is a real shame for a figure like Beast, whose power set is all about his agility. But I think that sublime feline head sculpt makes up for it. Every team needs a field general, and for Marvel's Merry Mutants, there is none finer than Scott Summers' Cyclops. Another original X-Man, Cyc was put through the emotional ringer leading up to this storyline. He had just seen the love of his life perish, again, all the while he was having a psychic affair with another one of his teammates. Cyclops has a reputation as a bland character, which Whedon exploited. In his initial appearance in the book, he admits that even he was bored by his speech to the students at Xavier's school. But Whedon found new depth for Summers, using his stoicism to create a truly memorable leader and hero. Cyc was another early Hasbro figure, featured in 2007's Brood Queen wave. The exact costume was released again in 2013's Puck Build-A-Figure wave, but I prefer the original, because I think it matches in scale and design with the other figures making up this team. Cyclops retains his classic blue and yellow looks, but the yellow is muted down to piping on his spandex, and for the first time, we see a silver visor on our team leader. The move back to classic superhero outfits was a major plot point for Whedon and Cassaday. Grant Morrison and artist Frank Quitely had taken the X-Men's look in a very different direction just before this. And while Whedon preferred the more classic superhero look, he worked the switch back to this into the plot of the series, with Cyclops making the point that if they were gonna be a superhero team and show that to the world, then they needed to look and act the part. To which Logan would quickly say, "Is this gonna be about tights?" And after Cyc's big motivating speech, he tells Wolvie that not only do superheroes wear costumes, but all that leather was starting to make people nervous. To which Beast replies, "Am I the only one who's dying to see the outfits?" This is one of the things that makes this run so magical. Yes, Whedon and Cassaday got the X-Men back to basics and back in costume, but they did it in a way that worked, that advanced the plot while developing the characters and managing to throw in a little humor. At this point, we are introduced to Emma Frost, the former White Queen, and now the head mistress of Xavier's School for Gifted Youngsters. She comes across as cold, conniving, icy, the perfect synergy of how Whedon wrote the character along with Cassaday's depiction, highlighted even further by her secondary mutation to diamond form. Plus, there are seeds planted from the very beginning that she is hiding something. Emma herself admits that she's not always comfortable in the hero role, and confides in Kitty that she wanted her on the team to watch her should she slide back to her old ways. Kitty Pryde, the sweetheart of the team, squints her eyes and says that her very first day with the X-Men, when she was only 13 years old, the team was ambushed, captured, and caged by the White Queen. She goes on to say, "When I think about evil, it's your face I see, Emma." She finishes with one of the best lines of the entire series. As she leaves, phasing through the wall, she turns and tells Emma, "I don't have to watch you. I can smell you." I loved that moment in the book so much that I sought out Cassaday's original art and bought it. Emma's figure came in Hasbro's much maligned first wave with the Annihilus Build-A-Figure in 2007. It is truly awful, one of the bottom 5 Marvel Legends figures ever produced. The head sculpt is gaunt and hideous, the proportions are all off, her joints are gangly and poorly functional. To add insult to injury, she was re-released in her diamond form as a Toys R Us exclusive. So, while I like the diamond better, it's really just double crap. Like Cyclops before her, she did get a new version in the 2013 Puck Build-A-Figure wave, and while that figure is not as unattractive as the previous version, it is way too tall. Emma has been redeemed in action figure form, however, from her Walgreens exclusive to the perfection that came from the Hellfire Club box set. But for now, we're stuck with this. Oh wait, is this an X-Men book? Well then that means we gotta have Wolverine. Whedon's introduction of Canada's native son was in perfect keeping with his character. We see Scott and Emma in bed when a voice from off-panel asks, "So tell me, what stage of grieving is this? Denial?" The Scott-Jean-Logan love triangle is foundational in X-Men lore, and by exposing this open wound in their initial meeting back after Jean's most recent death, it lets them air out their differences and move forward. Plus, it lets the traditionally bland Cyclops have one of his better lines. "Hey Logan, that healing power's about to come in really handy." Here's where Whedon was so successful with his characterization of Wolverine in Astonishing X-Men. He used him sparingly. Ever since Logan exploded in popularity during the Claremont Byrne days, he has been the focal point of every story he's been in. Whedon, however, realized that a little goes a long way with Wolverine, so his beats across this tale pack more punch. The lesson Joss Whedon learned scripting this book would serve him well, as he used the same strategy with the Hulk in the first Avengers film. The Astonishing X-Men Wolverine was the first figure from this series produced, appearing in the Apocalypse Build-A-Figure wave in 2005, and it is far and away my favorite from the series. John Cassaday gave us a newly designed outfit for Wolvie by inverting the pattern of the classic tiger stripe uniform and sharpening the angles on his mask. Cassaday is known for his fine attention to detail, as evidenced by his always managing to draw the seams on his costume. It is the most accurate recreation of Cassaday's art, and perhaps most importantly, the figure is incredibly short. This Wolverine scales better than any other Wolvie figure I have, as Toy Biz created an entirely new sculpt for this figure. Hasbro revisited this Wolverine outfit in 2004's very difficult to find Jubilee Build-A-Figure wave, but it lacks the personality or uniqueness of this older figure. Whedon and Cassaday produced 24 single issues and a giant-sized finale over a 4-year period. The tale was broken down into 4 6-issue arcs, with plot threads and themes running across the entire saga. The first arc was titled Gifted, and in addition to bringing the team together, it introduced Ord, an alien from the Break World, a distant planet whose prophecy states that a mutant, specifically an X-Man, will destroy his homeworld. To prevent this, he's provided human scientists with the technology to create a cure for the mutant gene. But to create the cure, they needed a mutant thought to be dead to test it on. When Beast learns the identity of the believed to be deceased mutant, It leaves the third issue with a classic cliffhanger, a stunned Cyclops simply mouthing the word, Jean. Look, I'm glad we have collected volume graphic novels, and I love Marvel Unlimited online service. But there is something to be said for reading comics the way they were meant to be, month to month. When you see that final image on the page, you're left hanging in suspense for weeks at a time. Is Phoenix reborn? You just have to wait and see. Let me put it another way. In high school, I had to read Charles Dickens' Great Expectations. It was terrible. It was incredibly boring. But then, in college, I took a literature class, and the professor made us read it the way that it was published. It was originally published as a serial in a magazine, only a few pages at a time. The professor would give us each episode, and we would read it between the next classes. And each of these 5 or 6 page episodes would end with a cliffhanger of some sort. It was a revelation. It brought out all of the suspense and the tension of the story. And that is how comics are supposed to be read. Whedon mastered these mini cliffhangers throughout his run. It was serial storytelling at its finest. So who was the mystery mutant? Well, the X-Men realized they were being held in a subterranean basement, so Kitty phased her way over a mile underground to discover her first love, the long-thought dead Colossus. To say that she was shocked is a bit of an understatement. Peter Rasputin, the mutant known as Colossus, no less shocked upon seeing his first love, falls to his knees wondering if he is finally in heaven and asks, "Am I dead?" Let's back this up for those without a PhD in X-Men history. The legacy virus was a devastating plague that ripped through the mutant population, killing hundreds, including Colossus's little sister Magic. Beast created a cure, but it required a mutant to sacrifice themselves in order to spread. A sacrifice Peter was willing to make, saving the rest of the mutant population at the cost of his life. But nobody stays dead in comics. The relationship between Kitty and Peter would form the emotional heart and eventual gut-wrenching heartbreak of the entire series. The Astonishing X-Men figure of Colossus is perhaps the most surprising of the bunch. Appearing in the 5th wave of the X-Men Classics subline of Marvel Legends, this 2005 figure was a retooled version of the Marvel Legends figure from 2 years earlier. That figure was pretty great, and it certainly counted as a definitive Colossus for the time. But Cassaday made subtle changes to Peter's costume, most notably at the shoulders and boots, as well as reworking the colors on his tunic. And Toy Biz took the time to get it right, including an all-new head sculpt, so that we would have a figure that perfectly matched the comic page. As always, it is this kind of dedication that made Toy Biz the gold standard of Marvel action figures. But we still gotta deal with this Ord character, who, upon seeing Colossus's return, decides discretion is the better part of valor, and turns tail to run. Whedon and Cassaday paid homage to great moments in X-Men history throughout their run. From recreating Paul Smith's iconic splash page with Kitty, to Rick Leonardi's classic cover where Storm and Cyclops battled for the leadership of the X-Men. They even aped the great John Byrne, whose stunning visual of Wolverine in the sewer was the basis for this equally powerful image of Kitty Pryde. With this encyclopedic knowledge, you knew they had some good stuff hidden up their sleeves. And it was with 2 unsaid words that they cemented their place in X-Men lore. Ord was getting away in a spaceship. Fast. Wolvie asks the newly resurrected Colossus how he's feeling, to which Peter replies, "I am strong." Wolvie smirks and says, "Then I just got 2 words for you, bub." He never actually says the words, but the Fastball Special is a 2-page spread that tells the world the X-Men are back. Feeling good? The team heads home and into tragedy for Whedon and Cassaday's second arc, appropriately titled Dangerous. While they were away on a mission, one of the students appeared to commit suicide in the Danger Room, the computer-simulated battleground where the X-Men have trained since the very first issue of the book. Turns out, the Danger Room has gained consciousness, and her first order of business is destroying the X-Men. The Danger figure came out in the same 2007 lineup as Cyclops in the Brood Queen Build-A-Figure wave. It is a terrifically detailed sculpt, very true to Cassaday's designs, but like so many of those early Hasbro legends, it would have benefited from some additional paint wash to bring out all the effort the sculptors put in. With her wings attached, however, it is an impressive piece. Certainly a worthy foe for the X-Men. So after thoroughly trashing the team, Danger goes after her primary target, her father and creator, Professor Charles Xavier. As the scene shifts to Genosha, the island site of a huge mutant massacre, Whedon and Cassaday provide us with one of the soap opera moments that made their run so great. Kitty and Peter have been tiptoeing around each other. Kitty's not sure if she's crowding Pete, while Pete tells her that he thinks she shouldn't go on this mission to Genosha. Kitty blows up at him, saying, "If you don't want me around, just say so." Gently, Peter explains that it's because he has learned that Kitty's father was killed during the Genoshan genocide, and he wants to spare her that pain. He walks away, calling her by his pet name for her, and letting her know that she is not crowding him nearly enough. I love a big action scene as much as the next fanboy, but these are the moments that suck me in and make the sacrifices to come that much more powerful. It's an all-out battle when Kitty asked Peter for a special, likely her first, resulting in a super wedgie, but she uses her intellect and phasing abilities to win the day. The team then learns that the professor knew the Danger Room had become sentient and left her trapped inside the machine for his own purposes. The X-Men turn their back on their founder, their father figure, and walk away. Perhaps forever. Things are pretty crappy as we enter our third act, Torn. The strain is starting to show between Scott and Emma as his suspicions about her loyalty are rising. Beast is dealing with increasing loss of control, and Wolverine, well, Wolverine's fine. Meanwhile, Kitty and Peter are rekindling their long-dormant relationship. After an eventful evening between the two, they show up at breakfast together. Wolvie takes a second to size things up and says exactly what has been on all of our minds this whole time. But if you're familiar with Whedon's storytelling on Buffy the Vampire Slayer, you know that when something goes right for one of the Scooby Gang, it means everything is about to fall apart. The long-simmering plotline with Emma comes to fruition as it's revealed that she's being controlled by Cassandra Nova, Professor X's evil twin. She destroys Scott's confidence, turns the Beast feral, and reverts Logan to the mamby-pamby boy of his youth. But she saves her cruelest twist for Kitty. Showing her a life with Peter that included a son, Kitty was given real happiness. But it was all a trick to get her to use her phasing powers to retrieve the body of Nova. However, before Cassandra Nova can complete her plan, our old friends Ord and Danger come crashing in, and everybody is teleported off to the break world for the final act of our story. Look, I'm just going to say it. The final act gets needlessly complicated. There are some worthy subplots and some behind-the-scenes machinations, but in the end, this story comes down to Peter and Kitty. Turns out, it is Peter who is prophesized to destroy the break world. And shockingly, the residents of that planet don't want that to happen. So they build a planet-sized device to launch a missile at Earth. Again, the comedic timing of Whedon's script with Cassaday's pacing and facial expressions comes into play. When asked about the break world, Peter says he has been planning to destroy it since he was a child, to the gasps and stares of everyone in the room. Realizing his mistake, he shrinks back and says, "See, this is why I don't make so many jokes." It's not easy to create laugh-out-loud moments in comics, but when you read this scene with Peter's Russian farm boy accent and his famous lack of understanding of sarcasm, it's comedy gold. Heading into the final battle, Kitty and Pete have one last chance to be together. Then, A powerless Cyclops sacrifices himself to save the team, which was all a ruse to get him closer to Ord, who eats a full frontal optic blast. Kitty phases into the center of the missile to try to find a way to stop it. I have that page too. At this point, the X-Men completely fail to stop the launch of the missile, which actually isn't a missile after all. It's a bullet headed straight at Earth, with Kitty trapped inside the hollow point. Whedon and Cassaday complete their epic saga with giant-sized Astonishing X-Men issue 1, in which the combined might of all of the heroes of the Marvel Universe fail to stop the bullet speeding towards the planet. Things are bleak for our heroine. Kitty is trapped inside the bullet. She's weak and exhausted from phasing through the alien metal. And the X-Men have no way to save her. In the final twist of this brilliant tale, it is Emma who makes psychic contact with Kitty as the bullet speeds towards the destruction of Earth. The former enemies share a moment, where Kitty reminds Emma she was the one supposed to watch her. Kitty asks, "Disappointed, Miss Frost?" Emma answers, summing up the entire book, "Astonished, Miss Pryde." In the final moment, Kitty summons every ounce of strength in her soul to phase the entire bullet, saving the Earth while sacrificing herself as she speeds off into the endless void, simply gone. If you liked this video, you will love this one that goes through the story of Thanos Wins. And hey, don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell so that you can stay up to date with everything that comes from Carbon Scoring.